Okay, so this one is going to be about natural law in a way that I haven't heard yet being taught or explained. On the surface, it's not going to seem like that. Hopefully by the end, you might get a bit more understanding of how it's all connected to natural law, because everything that exists in our reality has to have some relevance to natural law, otherwise it wouldn't be here in existence. So now we're going to look at how the mind program, how deeply embedded it is, and the series I've been doing on introspection and self-reflection, why it's deeply unpopular, because people are still in the delusion that they are of a higher order of consciousness, whilst they display all the qualities of someone who is mind programmed, has a mind virus installed in them, and they're totally incapable of actually locating it. Yet, when it comes to seeing it in other people, or the projections that exist in themselves, I guess more than anything, they're very good at identifying it then, and then they give themselves an exemption because they reckon they've identified it externally, right? So the whole point of this is instead of sitting here from a position of being above it, is to actually take it from a position of learning how this is an aspect of you as well, right? That no one gets out of this alive. We are all in the same boat when it comes to mind programming, and we all have the same capacities. So that's what this is about. And if you are in a space where you still think you're above it, oh yeah, when it's talking about someone else, I can totally see it, but I'm above that, I never do these things, right? Then you're not here to learn, right? Which has been the whole point of what I've been doing, right? I always say it from the beginning. If you're not here to learn, if you're not leading with curiosity and trying to identify yourself in what's being actually explained here, then you are in a place of denial, because anything that exists outside of you exists inside of you. It's how you deal with it, how you understand how to work with it, as opposed to trying to fight it and deny it. Because if you fight it and deny it, it'll control you, right? And this is what you're going to see here. So what's been set up here is someone who's jumped on with a comment, and they basically set themselves up in a trap straight away, and what they got was, the laws of nature reflecting back the same energy that they led with, right? That's the laws of attraction. All I do is I just amplify it, where the person has the choice then to have a look at, why did I get the message back the way that I didn't want? Why did that happen? Is it exclusively the other person's defectiveness, or might there be something about my energy that's being reflected back to me, right? This is more what's required if you're really in a space of enlightenment, right? And unfortunately, the majority of the work I do, the only things that people in numbers come look at is where they see the problem is being identified outside themselves. And they have no power there. Now I'm going to show you what that looks like in real time with this comment. And then just how quickly it escalates out of control, right? So this guy, Michael, comes in. He sees the video. Who knows what he's heard and understood? My guess is he's just heard it from his mental prison. And that's what seemed quite evident, because it was a test, right? What was given back was a test just to prove whether he is seeing it from the mental prison. Because anyone who is truly curious doesn't come in launching with an opinion, right? And now have a look at this. Oh, this is incorrect. I'm going to lead with the last thing he said, where he thinks he's actually, and you'll see how it got to that point, where he actually believes he's actually enlightened, right? This is the best part. So this is a response to someone else's comment. I appreciate the advice, I really do, as your reply at least has some validity and advice. Unlike our mate here, who is full of pointless criticism with no real explanation as to why. Now, if you'd really listen to it, there's no criticism being launched. It's all just learning, right? It's understanding how the program works, how people get controlled, right? That's just the learning. The fact that he's taking it as a criticism speaks more about him and his attachments to his worldviews, right, that have been programmed into him. But even with that said, I have chosen my path as to how to navigate this thing we call life. Now I'm going to show you demonstrably how that's absolutely inaccurate. Because to choose never means to actually violate someone else's integrity. That's not a choice. That's a program state. Not free will choice anyway. That's just karma. That's a reactive state. That's not a choice. Not in the classic sense of the understanding. And above all else, I choose not to listen to any word or idea of man, right? Now I'm going to prove just how incorrect that is, right? Very soon. But listen to the voice within. The voice within is the mind virus, right? Which has come from the idea of man. That's the part that's the best, right? It is only if you're here to learn, right? If you're here to be right, which is what this guy did, you're just going to prove how right you are, right? That's all you're going to get out of it, right? Then we're right back to where we started, and the mind program continues. And that's not with the purpose of anything I've ever done. It's to show you the mind program, so then you can choose whether you want to do something about it or whether you want to attach to it. But then you take the responsibility for the choice. And live within the natural law and order of the world and environment around me, right? So he's got these lovely ideas about what he wants, yet the way he's going about it is in the opposition. Like I said, we're going to get into that very soon. And I do my best not to let the actions or words of others affect my emotions, which is turn reflect on my decisions, right? This is the funniest part, right? This is the guy who's fully in delusion, which you're about to look at, right? Now remember all the things I said. If you've missed it, go back and hear it, read it again, and you'll see how pretty much point for point he's speaking about a delusion that he's in versus to what his actual capacities are in real time. So here we go. This is what he leads with, right? This is the guy who sees himself as enlightened, right? And doesn't let his actions or words, emotions be affected by ideas of others. So what do you call someone who is of the belief that they are more knowledgeable than those around them and who belittles any response they receive? I'm curious. Do you have a word for that? Now, there's the trick, right? He's curious. He's curious about what? Because when you lead with curiosity, you don't start with an accusation, right? Everything is written as an absolute accusation. He's going in with his version of reality that's been programmed into his ego, right? That there's only two ways to do this. You're either right or wrong, right? That's a total program state that doesn't exist in nature. And then that's him being curious, right? So he conceals it by calling it curiosity. So it's an absolute trap, right? It's so obvious it's a trap. So knowing it's a trap, that stinks of a trap, am I stupid enough to fall for it, right? That's the first question, right? Of course I'm not. So what do? I show him the mirror. Sounds like you do, and are wanting confirmation that you're right. If all you're getting out of the content is that it's an excuse to put others down and humiliate them, then the content isn't for you, so you best move on to what conforms with your biases and prejudices, where you're not going to be shown the mirror that exposes what you conceal in your shadows, right? That's all the work I've always been doing from day one. It's about take a look at yourself. How did you come to believe what you believe that you attach to, and you will fight for the death to preserve, right? How did you get to that state? Was that a voluntary choice, or was there something else that happened that was traumatized into you that you accepted? And now you've formed your worldview based on that trauma, right? And as a means to cope with the trauma that's been induced in you. That's what this is an invitation for, right? And people who are traumatized and never understand how trauma happens will only reenact their trauma, right? So what I'm doing is I'm giving him an opportunity to do something different with the trauma that he's been given, right? Knowing in my gut, by the way he's led, that he's going to do what I predict, which is to be reactive, right? To see me as an enemy, right? To see me as someone who's wrong, that's doing something bad. That's the program, right? I know that it's going to happen because I've had so many people do it. And I call them trolls because it's just a quick way to explain someone who's fallen for the mind virus, right? And so I know what they're going to do because every time I do BOSI stuff, I get the same thing. When I do the sovereign citizen stuff, I got the same thing, right? Just different versions of people who have different beliefs, but ultimately it's the truth about looking inside that they cannot handle, so they'd rather attack the one who's showing them the truth, right? And they see that as being something that I can do to them. Like there's another part of the mind virus. I cannot make you do or think or believe anything. All I can do is provide you the stimulus. You're the one who gets to choose how you react to it, right? So there's nothing I can say that can fire you up. That's all an internalization, right? I do these things deliberately to show you the energy that you're leading with, and I give it back to you and say, well, how do you like it? Let's see how you enjoy it when it's been reflected back to you. So if you don't like it, why do you lead with it, right? and they can't do the arithmetic. Their brains won't let them because of the egoic attachment to the program. So let's see what happens next. Mate, excuse me, I'm not the one who sits online all day telling people how stupid and blind they are, and that everything that they believe is a lie. Really? What's he just come and done? I have heard you talk down and belittle anyone who has a different way of doing things. Now just remember, he said that, right? Now you're going to see later what he actually does. Your answer to everything is literally, I'm right, you're wrong. So this is someone who can only see reality as that polarity, right? That there's only one side or the other. There's nothing between that spectrum. Right? So they are already projecting their polarized state of seeing the world, the black and white, the rigid state. There's no movement there, right? They're already telling you. It's projecting their interpretation that's been programmed into them, and now making it a reality for everybody, and they're insisting that it's right and true. Right? That's why I wrote what I wrote, because I could see it straight away. It's so obvious. Now, if you think that I think I'm smart because I can figure this out, that's really more to do with you than me, because you could figure it out too if you allowed yourself to. If you actually slowed down, took some breaths, and started going, okay, why do I get the reaction that I'm getting? What's that about? Why? Is there something that I don't know? Maybe it's worth me investigating to figure it out. Are people really, really wanting to harm one another? Is that they're really, really wanting? Because if that was the case, there'd be no one left on this planet. If that was our actual intended purpose, there'd be no life on the planet, right? So that doesn't make any sense. Yet, this is what people do. They just still stick at that program. They won't let it go. All I did was ask a question, really. Now look at the innocence that's been claimed. Was it a question or was it a confirmation bias that was concealed as curiosity? Because someone who leads with curiosity doesn't lead with an accusation. They would lead with something that would sound like this. Okay, when I listen to this, this is what I interpret. I interpret that this is about you. I'm telling myself this, right? This is about you believing you're better than everyone else. However, there might be things that I'm not seeing that I would like to actually, the opportunity to be shown where I might have missed something. So if that's not the case, I'd be interested for you to let me know what it is that I've missed, so I can actually figure some things out and I can do some learning and growing, because that's what I'm really here to do. Right? That's leading with curiosity, because then you're taking ownership of your current belief structure, and that you're willing to actually be shown things that you haven't seen that have escaped your field of vision, but you are curious to find out how that will change your reality. That's curiosity. What he's done had none of that in there. Okay, so let's move on. You've got it now, the advice, right? This is the real program state. As soon as someone steps into giving advice, they believe they know what's right for you, right? So this is the part they don't get it, right? They don't understand what true understanding is. It's not giving advice, because that's just you making yourself right. You've got to stop living your life with your guard up, mate. Not a healthy way to live. See, thinks he knows all the answers, right? Believing that that's what I'm actually doing. So this is all just self-talk. He's just talking to himself, right? Because how does he understand reality if it's not from his own position? He can't understand any other way. No one really cares that much, unfortunately, about the world or what you have to say, whether you're right or wrong. Not only is it not good for you, but for the people also around you. So this is him now taking the high road, right? He's like this healer now. He's got all the answers. This is the program state, right? Believing that that was even something that was being invited. Why would you go into something when someone hasn't even invited, right? All I've done is put information out. You can take it or leave it. Did I invite you to start educating me on how right you think you are, right? No one made you come and watch this. If you're not here to learn, then you don't have to come and watch it, right? Don't have to. But if you come here to watch something only to prove how right you are, then you're not here to learn. But then you're not taking responsibility about that, right? Why would you go and watch things just to confirm that you're right, and then go and tell someone else how wrong they are? Let them, if you really believe that they're wrong, let them have it. Why do you have to come and enforce your version of reality? You don't see me going on other people's pages telling them how wrong they are. Why would I do that? What will it accomplish? It would just accomplish defensiveness. That's understanding natural law, right? So this guy really believes he's like, he's got it sorted out. So let's see what else happens. Then he goes and defends himself, right, about being called out for the shadows. As for shadows, I don't have any. as my guiding light always sits right above me. Like, and then obviously it was too easy, that one, so it's like in denial match laughing, right? I mean, anyone who comes and tells you what they are, if they have to justify it to you, that means they're trying to convince themselves. Because if you really believe you need to tell anyone else how smart you are, or how enlightened you are, then you're not enlightened, because someone who actually is enlightened does not seek approval or validation from any external source. They just don't. So why is he justifying himself, right? This is someone who's deeply inadequate, feels inadequate and insecure. Yet, that's why they come and get defensive when they see my material, because it brings up those insecurities. And they can't handle it. Their ego just won't have it. And this is the part they don't want to look at, right? And this is all natural law. If you don't take full responsibility for yourself, how you've come to believe, what you believe, what was the trauma that was induced inside you that got you to shut down, actual curiosity, not pretend, but actual curiosity. What is that? There's no healing for you. All you're going to do is find the fault outside and look for it outside, then you can punish it where it's safe. And that's what this guy does. So what do? I show him the mirror and I just amplify it a bit more. Because I know what's going to happen. I know how predictive these people are when they come into that state with that egoic mind that believes it's absolutely right and has to protect its rightness. No, you're the one who comes in projecting their biases and prejudices as if they are absolute truths. Nothing trolly about that. And I know those laughy faces incense people, right? So that's why I do it. And then go and start diagnosing the problem as if it's outside of you. Saying no one cares like you have been granted the divine authority to speak for other people like a fake God. See when people make those blanket statements? Nobody cares, like they just know what everyone cares about. They just have this divine knowledge all of a sudden. They can be in everyone's mind. They've got this omnipresence in everyone's mind. Yet here you are commenting, contradiction much, right? So just showing him the mirror, right, of just how full of contradictions he is. Repeating the same old paradigm that defines the enslaved mind. It's only when you grow up and that you gain the insight to realize how immature you once were. Sorry, it should say it's only when you grow up that you gain the insight to realize how immature you once were. That's the point of growth, right? Is once upon a time, you thought you were right, and you had it all sorted out, you understood it, and then you get to a point and go, actually, no, I really needed to have that lesson to really understand that path wasn't for me. That's not who I truly am. And that lesson's got a value in it for me. Instead of hating yourself over it, it's like, wow, that was a precious gift. Now, how many people do that, right? Most people hate on themselves for what they've done. So this guy is reeking out loud of self-hatred. But if you read what he put at the start, he actually believes he's enlightened. If you are so attentive as you claim to be, you wouldn't be on here having a sook, and I'd put that word in deliberately, right, because I knew it was going to invoke rage, right, about who believes themselves to be superior by showing others how inferior they are. But yet, here you are doing just that. Perhaps it's time you just left. Now, this was an invitation, right? I know what the ego is going to do when I do this. I do this on purpose. Because, don't tell me what to do. That's what people do. They get defensive because they only have two positions. Is to rebel or submit. They don't see any other alternative, right? That's how you know you can control people. And that's what the mind magicians do. I'm just showing you how it's done, right? I'm giving you real-time evidence of how I know what you're going to do next. Because he does exactly what I said, right? Even after I've told him. So if you're so attentive as you claim to be, you wouldn't be on here having a sook about who believes themselves to be superior by showing others how inferior they are. But yet here you are doing just that, right? So he's complaining about what he perceives me to be doing, right? That I'm making myself to be above others. Yet he's coming with that exact same energy that he's projecting into me, right? So there's a double whammy for himself. Perhaps it's time you just left because there is going to be no heroic victory for you here. And clearly that's what you're here to do. Now let me explain what that means. When your mind is programmed to believe that people are right or wrong, the very next thing that happens is that it becomes an act of heroism to enjoy their pain, to inflict as much pain on them as you can to make them suffer so they will learn their lesson. That's why it's called a heroic victory. And the entire structure, whether you believe that you're smarter than everyone else or whatever, I'm willing to bet whatever you like that you have yourself experienced the pleasure of enjoying someone else's suffering. I see it happen day in, day out, and all these social media posts, in all these different versions of it, is one of the biggest sicknesses that infests the planet. And that is the mind program, the mind virus, right? That's the hate that enters your heart as soon as you start believing you have an enemy, instead of unifying with those who are trying to show you truth, so you stop behaving like this. So you actually start knowing what true love is. Not this fluffy stuff about having warm, fuzzy feelings, but the willingness to accept objective truth dispassionately, regardless of what it's going to expose. That's what true love is. No other form of love can exist until you get to that state. That is what I'm doing. If I need to explain it to you again and again, maybe I will, maybe I won't. I don't know. We'll see. But that's what I'm actually doing. So I'm putting it there. And this is an act of love. I'm guessing there's not going to be many people who know what I'm doing is an act of love here, right? Because if I don't show you the mirror, you're not going to see that you have a choice or you don't have a choice. You are not going to have that opportunity. I'm not saying you're going to be capable of seeing it. I can see that's not possible for many people because of where their mind virus is lodged, how deep it's lodged. However, the choice is still available. You can pause, reflect, why am I getting this energy back? What is it I don't know? Have I come into it with any assumptions? Have I led with any of my prejudices and biases? Let me take a proper inner reflective look at what I've actually done, where my power is, where my responsibility is. How many people really do that, right? It's just, you don't see it happen. So then I amplify it again. I'm willing to bet you're going to do what all the other trolls do, because he's handed to me by saying he's not a troll, right? When the ego is called out. So I'm like, oh, well, you just give me ammo. I know what your triggers are by saying he's not a troll, right? He's told me. Anytime you lead with you're not, it's actually your subconscious mind saying what it is you fear that you are. That's the capacity of what happens to people when they lack knowledge, right? So I'm handing it to people, just like Mark Passio does, just like Larkin Rose does. There's a whole list of people that are just handy the knowledge. What gets in the way is the ego. That's why Mark Passio loses his mind, right? These people who call themselves freedom fighters, they allow their ego to get in the way, their attachments to get in the way. And then I tell him what he's going to do next. In fact, when their ego gets called out, and I tell them how predictable their egoic reaction, that's meant to be, is going to be, what you're about to do next happens. And let's have a look. And then what does he do? I'm going to do what any rational, so right, he's giving himself this title, like that he's better, he's rational, right? Any rational. That's the classic political speak, right? There's your rhetoric right there. If you do what I do, then you're rational. You're a good person, right? Look how he's setting it up. Moralistic judgments all over the place. Would do and not waste my time with someone who clearly has trouble engaging in any kind of debate or conversation. Now here it is. See the word debate? That's the trap. The amount of people that believe that debating is a healthy thing have swallowed the mind program. And it's lodged so deep they can't see the head from tail. They just can't. It's not possible. Because the word debate means proving who's right. That is a sickness. Because that is all what war is about. War is about proving who's right. Just using violent force to do it. So if you can defeat someone through violent force, well, that makes you right. Well, that's what this is. If I can intellectually outsmart you, then I must be right. If I can come up with more arguments that are cleverer in my construction, and your intellect can't pick them apart, then I must be right. That's all you're engaging in. There's no universal reality there, right? There's no shared reality there. There's no intelligence there. It's all intellect, and intellect can be programmed. Right? That's not a high form of intelligence. The majority of people believe it is. They confuse intellect with intelligence, and they can't tell the difference. Intelligence is where we're all equal. There is no one who's more intelligent than anyone else. It doesn't exist. Right? The sheer fact that you know when there's justice or injustice without anyone needing to explain it to you shows that you have all the intelligence you require. It's just that you've been programmed out of how to trust that intelligence and then take the actions that will support it. That's what the intellect's been manipulated to do. If you can't answer my initial question, it says a lot. So he's basically saying, if you don't fall for the trap that I've set, where you're either going to be one end of the polarity or the other, where I get to prove myself right either way, well, then that says a lot about you, that you're inadequate, right? That's what he's setting up, as opposed to, well, actually, I choose not to fall for traps. That's a choice that I make because I can see them, right? So why would I? It's like if I'm walking in the bush and I happen to spot these, bear traps, why would I step in them? That's just causing myself suffering unnecessarily, and that, I'm going to pay for in a way that I probably can't ever change. So why would I do that? Maybe it's time to venture outside and live in the real world. So here he goes, right? So now here comes the shaming, right? So anytime you start seeing people using shaming tactics, this is someone who's disconnected from intelligence, and they're all about vengeance. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Now look how he gets away with it, right? So now he abdicates his responsibility for what he's set up, the shaming, and then he turns it onto some illusory thing called the game, right? Where he has no responsibility. Now this is what enlightenment looks like for these people. And so, obviously, a bit more baiting on purpose. Thanks for doing as predicted, which he did. He did exactly what I suspected. His ego was going to come in there and justify why it's right. And the only way he can do it is to shame and enjoy violating the other's integrity. Your service to the enslaved mind has been invaluable. Right? So here we go. What do you want about? It's becoming clear that you have no ability to process anything you read or see in front of you. More projection, right? Like, he's just exposing himself. This is how good it gets. Either because you are just illiterate and your parents dropped you on your head as a baby. More shaming, right? So this is like, I've got to make it as painful as I possibly can for you to get you to submit to me being right about the projection I'm putting into you that I don't want to own is actually all aspects of me that I haven't integrated. Instead of loving them up, I'm hating them. I hate those things about myself. So I haven't done the real shadow work that I need to understand that they're actually critical aspects of me that create the whole me. I want to put them outside of me. There I can punish them mercilessly, right? And enjoy it and have a heroic victory when I see you capitulate and submit to my will, right? Tell me that's someone who understands natural law, like the true nature of it, and isn't inviting karma back to themselves. I'm guessing you are someone who has never, gets really good now, had a real relationship, let alone been married or started a family of their own. Someone who has never had the balls to start your own business and develop economic growth. Like, look what he's doing, right? He's using all the program states, all the markers that the program wants you to believe are how you get self-worth out of this reality. So the actual mind manipulators, the dark priests, whatever you want to call them, the ones who understand psychology back to front, have made sure that the majority of people believe this is what your mark is of how to get self-worth and be externally validated for it. Like, it's so obvious when you understand how natural law really works, right? This guy claims to, as you saw in the opening statement, yet he's proving that his mind is so enslaved that he can't even see that every one of his thoughts have been controlled by this central idea that's impregnated deep in his psyche that he doesn't know is there, but he's been traumatized into it. And the harder he tries to shame, right, the more shows about how much self-hatred he lives with. And someone who is too shit scared to hit the streets in protest. So now someone who's too shit scared to use themselves as cannon fodder for the state to use more of their weapons they've been storing to test them out, right? And not only that, not only to get off on using those weapons, but to then use those people who come and protest against the state to even program the masses to fear freedom even more. Like, that's a good thing to do, right? To go and protest, to beg to your masters for a little bit of kindness. That's what he sees, right, as the pathway to a hero's journey. And size up the authority when the time calls for it. Just sitting along the fence and pointing criticisms. See, he only sees the world through that. Now, this thing about sizing up the authority when the time calls, so he thinks everything's about action reaction. That's all about fighting. Meet force with force, fire with fire. That's the way it's done. That's all that's ever done is created more violence. And this is all this brain can do, right? There's a program working perfectly. You think by reciting the Constitution or Magna Carta is going to save you from your false reality you live in behind your screen. Laughing his head off. Good luck with that, right? So here he is, he's turning against the clarity that's required for himself, right? Not only everyone else, but for himself, of any system that claims to be a system of public service, right? Now he wants to destroy that and use that against me. Like that's now going to be just suffering for me. You see what's happening here? It's so funny. So this is where people will turn on themselves without even knowing they're doing it, right? Because they're so attached to destroying their neighbour. Because their neighbour is not doing what they want or conforming to their biases and prejudices. There's a real anxiety and fear that their safety is dependent upon people conforming with their biases and prejudices, as opposed to looking at their biases and prejudices and lining them up with the absolute truth, and then learning the difference of what happens when you attach to a bias versus to absolute truth. There's that fear, like somehow they're not going to have the strength to get through that, right? The floor is going to be released and they're going to be in perpetual freefall. That's really what sits behind it, that anxiety, and that's unfortunately the whole entirety of anyone who gets outside and starts calling themselves, giving themselves titles. As soon as you give yourself a title, you have proved you are so far from enlightenment. It's not funny. Someone who is enlightened would never do that. They would never limit themselves with some kind of title or label, saying that they are something. All you are is just being in the moment. That's all you can ever be. You can't be anything else more than that. It's not a title. It's just existence, right? And this is how far away. He's a perfect depiction of the freedom movement, right? Where they are, why I've been doing the work I do, and why Mark Passio loses his mind, right? About what he's been putting up with. And then he goes back to a bit of gloating, right, to proving his biases and his accusations, like justifying that he was right the whole time. You still haven't answered my first question to you. I wonder why. And then he's got the laughing, right? So, here's the heroic victory that he's conjuring up for himself. So, of course, I'm going to show him the mirror and amplify it on purpose because, he's inviting that. Right, he's getting back the energy he's putting in. So much fun watching the insecure egoic chatter of the paid government spook. You guys only have one play, especially after the retard just openly stated that it's done wasting its time, proving how dense it is. Like he did say that earlier, right? He's done. He's not coming back. And then what did he do? Right? Clearly proving your deficiencies and inadequacies is exactly where you volunteer investing your time. Right? So that's what these people really want to do without realizing. They think that if they can project theirs into other people, then that's them absolving themselves of their personal responsibility to face up to themselves. That's usually what most people do, right? This is what natural law is, guys. It's not just seeing the enemy as outside, it's you seeing how you create the enemy within. Because by your attachment to things you find uncomfortable about you, you create an inner enemy and then you fight it, not within yourself, by throwing it out. And those who have the fight within themselves turn into depression. The ones who throw it out turn into hostile aggression against the other. And that's what we've got here. This is some guy who sees his only two choices as being internally aggressive or externally aggressive. That's all he sees as his choices. That's the program state. Every comment you make only serves to prove how easy it is to control the demoralized slave that you are. Now, if you've seen some of the videos I've done, I've explained what demoralization is. It's to have a lack of understanding of objective morality, because it's demoralized, right? You no longer can assess what is objective morality and what is moral relativity, right? And this is what the whole purpose of Satanism is to get the overwhelming majority of people to attach to moral relativism, because then they can be easily controlled, because then they allow someone else to dictate what that is, right? And they don't even know it's happening. Time to get, and this part I actually enjoyed. I thought that was quite funny, this version, because I knew it was going to incense him. Time to get another soggy biscuit your cult masters have prepped for you for doing their bidding. Swallow that karmic goodness. If there was one that went, I couldn't find one, but I would have liked it. Yet here you are, doing the opposite of everything you claim to value. Oh my, a bigger rock ape you won't see. Every time you get thrown a banana, you slip on the skin. So now look at his reply. Mate, it's Sunday, and some of us actually have a life to enjoy. I'd love to sit here and quarrel with you over whose dick's bigger. So, he's saying, before he left, right, he said he's done with it, he's come back. So you can see the ego won't let him leave, right? Then he's projecting all the things he's doing onto someone else. This is just like, it just shows you. It's so obvious. They're so easy to predict. And so, guys, if you're going to lead with accusation and bias, this is what you're going to get, right? And then you're not even going to be able to see how you've trapped yourself. And you're going to keep digging your hole bigger and bigger. And you won't find a way out of it because you only believe there's one way to be. And that is to be hostile towards those who disagree with you. When you set up a situation of agree or disagree without even knowing you've done it, that's all part of the mind program. But like I said, I got a life to enjoy, really. See how he says a life? Like everything you do is life. But it's like projecting this idea that this version of what he's doing is not living. Yeah, it is. It's just not servicing what he's really wanting. And he doesn't want to take responsibility for his part in it. With the world and people I choose to live with and live in. Have a look at that, right? So now he's like making himself like he's got choices and stuff like that. While I've been pulling his chain the whole time and he's been reacting to it. Regardless of constitutions and Magna Cartas and all types of Anglo-Saxon dogshit charters, that was almost poetic, your ancestors created. How does he know that they're my ancestors? You know what I mean? It's full of assumptions. Like this is just how dense people are. They make themselves like this final arbiter of what's actually true. And they can't even see they're doing it. I live under no man, no law, no authority or social system. Yet, while he says that, his entire mind is programmed by man, by that law system, and the social system. Because he's a product of it with everything he's done in his behavior in this whole conversation, right? This is the thing. I've said this from day one. You show me someone who believes they're in charge of their own decisions, and I will show you a good slave. And here you have it. And the best part is, what makes them a good slave is they really still believe that they're in charge of their thoughts. And they can't see it for save themselves. And they will cling to those thoughts like they are sacred. And they're somehow enlightened now because they have these thoughts. Without realizing that thought is not intelligence. It's one aspect of how to communicate intelligence, but it is of its own not intelligence. It's a tool, and it can be manipulated because it is a tool. And very few people understand that. And when I say that, people who hear this from a place where they have all this self-doubt will come and hear that as some kind of criticism of their inabilities, right? That's what they'll hear. As opposed to, well, actually in reality, if they did understand that, I wouldn't need to be sitting here explaining it. And do my best to live my life in a higher state of consciousness and frequency. So you see what I say? They always sit there saying that there's something they're not. Because the only people who really have this urge to go and say that are the ones who don't do it. They're the doers and the sayers, right? The ones who do it have no need to have any acknowledgement for anyone. They understand the value of what they're doing. That's powerful enough of its own. Something you clearly know nothing about, as your simple mind has yet to develop and stuck in the same place your head is, which is way deep in your ass. Now tell me that's not a massive exercise in shaming, right? Like, look at the self-hatred this guy wants to inflict on someone else to teach them how to submit. That's the point of shame. Yet, he's full of shame by the sheer fact that he's doing that. Because if he didn't learn how to suck eggs, he wouldn't teach me how to suck eggs. Right? So he's been shown how to hate himself. And that the only way he knows how to win, because the only choices he sees in reality is to win and lose, right? He doesn't see any others. Is that for him to actually survive, he needs to defeat his enemy, right? And then his enemy is anyone who shows him things that he doesn't want to deal with within himself. Again, Don't hate the player, sunshine. Hate the game. So now he's like, here I'm going to do maximum pain, the best way I know how, the best way I've been programmed to, and then I'm going to remove my personal responsibility for what I've just done, and then say it's to do with the game, right? It's nothing to do with me. I have no choice here. It's something that's above me. Don't turn on me. I'm the one who's doing you a good service by showing you how inadequate you really are. That's what he's saying, whilst exposing all of his own inadequacies. Right? Now, if you're sitting there going, well, you're doing the same, yes, I absolutely am. And I take ownership of that. And the best part of it is that I'm aware of why I'm doing it. How many people can honestly say why they're doing it? Right? There's a difference. And that difference, I needed to learn, and I needed to learn it the hard way. I needed to, go in with a bit of faith in people and see where they're at to test, what their capabilities are on this platform. So I tried that out. I used to give empathy to certain people who were displaying distress without realizing they were doing it. They were getting really judgmental and critical. So they were what's the word I'm after? When you act out their trauma, their anguish, their torments, they project it outwards, and they're really looking for understanding. And so, I was giving them empathy, and it worked fine for a little while, very short, didn't take that long. And then pretty soon, they'd start hearing in their minds that they're being psychoanalyzed, right? So they get really defensive. And that's what taught me something. It taught me something really precious about this platform, and that is that it's set up on purpose. The whole structure is to indulge the ego. Why would they have this whole thing about getting fans, and then you get rewarded by what you get, like monetary rewards if you get lots of followers, likes. It's all set up just to pump the ego up. So this entire platform is not conducive to real exposure to inner knowledge about your vulnerabilities, about your fragilities, your frailties, that they are a strength and a gift. That's not what this platform's set up for, because there's no money to be made from that, right? There's only healing, and this platform is not for healing. Healing comes from acknowledging those things and then treating it with tenderness, with care, with compassion. That's how healing occurs, and this platform doesn't. It's not conducive to that. It's not set up for that. What it's set up for, it's because it's by the same people who run the system, right? That we're all enslaved under. It's set up to celebrate agreeing as the highest aspiration. So if you agree with someone, then you get rewarded. Then disagreement, that will net you punishment, right? It's punishment reward, the whole thing. That's what it's set up for. It's set up to isolate those who don't agree with whoever seems to believe that they're right, and how many people they can get on their army to back them up. And so the more people that are right, well, that army's right. It's that whole gang mentality. That's what this whole platform's for. So that's why I don't do empathy on this one. I learnt the hard way. That's not what it's for. And so I do empathy, and presence, an entirely different platform that's set up for that. So when people come to that platform, their whole energy is geared for that. So they're more open to really receiving that knowledge. This isn't it. That's why I just wanted to say why I use this platform as like a natural law teacher, because the energy that you lead with, all I'm going to do is reflect it back to you, so you can have a look in the mirror how you've led, and then that's what you'll get back, because that's the law of attraction. So it's just showing people the laws of nature as they exist, and that's why I do it this way. And so that's a conscious choice I make. That's the difference, where what I've noticed, far too many people are not aware of what they're doing and why they're doing it. And so we're going to move on now. Yet here you are, doing the opposite of everything you claim to value. Oh my, a bigger rock ape you won't see. Every time you get thrown a banana, you slip on the skin, right? You tell me it's different. So this guy just keeps giving himself more and more rope to hang himself with, right? So whilst the world was out there enjoying life, so now he's making it like he's got this collection now, right? That there's all these other people, and here I am, alone and miserable, right? Self-hating, just, poor me. Like, see how he makes it? Like, you just see the way it's so easily set up, right? He's now he's conscripting this other thing that doesn't exist, but trying to make it like it's true. You sat around all day trying to think of something to respond to me. Like, that's what I actually did. Mate, you're too easy to bait. Like I said before, your simpleton mind cannot resist the urge to have the last say, even if it's nothing bit right and a reflection of who you really are. That's how easily you are owned. Now remember, this guy about 3 comments ago said he's done, right? So he's showing everything he's doing. He's projecting outwards. Might want to have a good look at yourself before you go try lecturing anyone on true freedoms and breaking free from the system. Especially from a bloke who's either too ugly to show his face or is gutless to put a face on the rot you speak day in, day out. And a lot of people, see, he's laughing, right? So obviously more shame. Referencing, and of all people, referencing a banana as insult. Okay, so he can recognize the insult, right, in some levels, but his aren't, right? Using the ugly thing, like that's now somehow a measure of worth based on some arbitrary idea of what someone finds appealing or not. Do you know what I mean? Like that's now, I'm supposed to now yield to that and assess my self-worth based on someone else's arbitrary opinion, of what they want to perceive as being attractive or unattractive. Or my level of courage, right? So look what's being done here. So it's like really digging it as deep as he can, right? When 3 messages ago, he was like, I'm done, I've got better things to do, I'm way better than this, all that kind of stuff, proving the opposite, right? This guy is in it. He loves the fight. He loves the drama. This is what he gets his energy from. This is what he needs. Otherwise, he would never lead with an accusation. So if you're leading with an accusation, guys, every time you lead with one, you are proving that that's what you want coming back to you. You want that energy coming back. You know no other way to be. And that's only because you're seeking to heal from the trauma that's been induced in you. Yet you don't have the tools to do anything different. So you become the tool, the implementer of abuse. You are the violator of yourself and others. That's the tragedy that's here. I'll give you an example. You think about if you're sitting, and I use this one when I've done talks, if you're sitting quietly by yourself and all of a sudden you see someone who you've assessed in your mind is a delinquent. And before you know it, they've walked past and kicked you in the shin, right? Think about the reaction you're going to have, right? Are you going to have a reaction of understanding, or are you going to have a violent reaction where there's hostility and aggression? Now, same situation, you're sitting peacefully and you notice someone who's got what you would assess to be cerebral palsy coming past and they're sort of losing their trajectory, and before you know it, they stumble into you and they kick you in the shin. The pain's exactly the same, right? So the outcome's the same, the bruising, the lump, it's all the same, it hurts exactly the same. Are you going to have the same internal emotional response? That proves to you that it's all about the thinking and how the thinking changes the experience. That's the point. The mind virus is there to change how you think about the same experience. So if this guy didn't have the mind virus, he could see my reactions are an invitation, a gift for him to take a look at what he's doing. Is he servicing what he's really wanting? Is this the higher order of consciousness to lead in with the bias, prejudice, and accusation? Is it the higher order of consciousness to split the world into a duality of either right or wrong? Is that the higher order of consciousness? Really, is that going to serve peaceful, harmonious living? Does it do that? By choosing to see people as evil, and that's all they could ever be if they don't conform to your prejudices and biases, the way that you've come to believe you can only be safe. Safety doesn't exist in nature. It doesn't. Nature is indifferent to your safety. It's up to you to figure out how to be safe. And if you're going to use methods that violate someone else's integrity, you are going to make sure you're going to be even more unsafe. And that's what he's done. And that's why he's got back what he's gotten. It's the lesson that nature is going to teach you. All I'm doing is I'm being the conduit and just amplifying it and giving the invitation. Are you going to keep going down that path? Is it still working for you? Is it getting better for you, or is it getting worse? Why is it getting worse? Ask yourself the question, what have you done to make it better? By amplifying and ramping up the way you led, did that improve the situation? Did you get the understanding you really wanted? Is that what you did to help that along? These are all things where you have power. When you put your wealth and health and safety in the hands of someone else's approval, you have relinquished your power. And what's he done there? by saying, that he thinks that I'm ugly and that I'm cowardice, right? He actually believes that I actually react to those things, that they matter to me, because they matter to him, not to me. If it mattered to me, I wouldn't keep doing what I'm doing, because I know I attract this kind of attention. I know that's what I'm going to get, because that's the density that we're working in. I recognize that. But if that's what I was going to cower to, I would have stopped ages ago. If you go through all my comments, you'll see it's attack after attack, right? It's people showing their lack of actual knowledge, and then the deficiencies and inadequacies show up in the way that they lead with hostile aggression. All right, let's move on. Sounds like a troll, talks like a troll, looks like a troll, and then claims not to be a troll. I show you the mirror, and you turn it into rope, and then hang yourself with it. Then he doesn't come back, right? But then something surprising happens. So this shows up unexpectedly, a third-party comments. So it's external to you, your saviour. Do you believe you have already won? That is the New Age religion you believe in. So look at what's been put in parentheses here, right? New Age religion and belief. So there's some real clear message being put here. This is solipsism, and it is a mental condition prevalent in our species, which is occulted knowledge. So solipsism, if you don't know what it means, basically means that anything that exists outside your mind is not reality. So it's different to the actual spiritual teachings where we are just individuated versions of one consciousness. That's not that. It's the opposite, is that you are the creator of it all, and there's no interconnectedness whatsoever. Sorry, should I say? This is how they manipulate our psychology. Unfortunately, nothing will change unless we take action and learn this fully. If you need to understand this better, I would highly recommend you listen and watch Mark Passier's 3-part natural law videos. So think about what's been said there, right? And then this is the original comment, what I started with. I appreciate the advice, I really do, as your reply at least has some validity and advice, unlike our mate who is full of pointless criticism with no real explanation as to why. But even with that said, I have chosen my path and how to navigate this thing we call life. And above all else, I choose not to listen to any word or idea of man, but listen to that voice within and live with the natural law and order of the world and environment around me. Hopefully now you understand what I said at the beginning and can see how the two are like this massive delusion. This guy's in a massive, massive delusion. And this, sadly, is the bulk of the people who believe they're actually truth seekers. That's the sad part. And if we're really to actually have anything new happen in our reality, it requires us to look where we haven't looked before. Right? It requires us to care enough to see what's there in front of us as it is, not how we want it to be because we want to protect our egos. That's the point of why we're here. We're here to expand our consciousness where you can recognize reality that's neutral, not that favors your comforts. And that's how you grow. So the pain and suffering you endure is usually going to be because of some way of thinking that you've come to adopt as a truth that actually isn't. That's the point of suffering, is to show you that what you've adopted to be true is not. And unless you're going to learn from that, you are going to keep repeating that and then thinking that someone else is at fault for it, where you have no power. That's the point of the mind program. And here you have a very well, educated, programmed slave. But the tragic part is that there's a part of inside that wants to get out and stop being enslaved, but is too afraid to, because they won't take self-ownership of how they've come to believe what they believe. Because look at the stuff they're spinning out, right? They're hiding by creating these ideas of what they want themselves to be, but they're actually not in real life action. And then because their inner educator has been programmed to see criticism as the only way to learn, that prevents them from the actual growth. Because inside he's got an inner critic going off like nuts. And then that inner critic's, giving him two choices, to rebel or submit. If he submits, he turns and becomes depressed. When he rebels, he makes enemies of the people around him. So either way, he's losing. And when he loses, we all lose. That's the tragic part. The problem is that I can't make you do the work. You need to care enough to want to. to do what's really, really necessary. Now, Mark Passio, as much as I really, really get heaps of value, I actually enjoy when he has his rants and he's going crazy and swearing at people and calling them all kinds of names, stuff I could never have thought of myself. I find hilarious. Yet at the same time, Mark is still yet to understand one of the principles of natural law and that is anger. Anger doesn't come from other people. It comes from your thoughts about what you think other people are for what they do. And that in itself is a program state. And if you are lacking that knowledge, you'll always be riling in anger. And I did that example earlier, right? So the one about being kicked in the shins, that's a perfect example of it. It's never what anyone does that makes you angry. It's how you interpret it. And if you choose to interpret in a way where they're an enemy on some level, where there's something wrong about them for what they did, that makes them an enemy, you will go from anger to hostility and aggression. That will amplify it. The sad part is it actually disconnects you. It's a warning light. Anger is a warning light that's disconnecting you from what's truly, truly important to you. And if you're disconnected from what's truly and truly important to you, you won't have any power of how to make that come into reality. So when Mark loses his mind, what's truly important to him? It's that people actually start taking in the knowledge. But when he insults them, what he's basically going to make more likely is that they're going to be less likely to take in the knowledge because they're hearing all these messages that they should hate themselves, and only by hating themselves will they be able to take in the truth. That's not how truth works. Truth acceptance doesn't come through self-hatred. Now, hearing this is going to sound like what I'm doing is contradictory because I'm teaching this guy how to hate himself. All I'm doing is showing how people become their own enemies, right? How it's done for the purpose of learning. If you can't still see that and you still think this is a contradiction, that's fine. I can't force you to see that. I'm just giving you how it is that I need to engage in the muck and the mud in order to extract the lesson. If I pretend that I'm above it, that I don't need to be engaging in it, there's no lesson there. So I need to show it by doing it. There's no other way. You can't learn how to ride a bike unless you get on the bike and try and ride it. Doesn't matter how many times you fall off and hurt yourself, you still need to do it. So you need to have the bumps and bruises to eventually get to the point where you can figure out that's not how I want to be doing it. I need to try something else. So I need to get involved in that to be able to show people. Otherwise, if I just sat there and gave you an intellectual understanding of it, there's no learning. Right? So this is about you finding yourself in here. How many times do you launch with these accusations? How many times do you launch with assumptions in your day and then pursue them? I do it heaps. I'm the first to own up to it. And every time without fail, my assumption's been incorrect. And when I found out the truth, I'm like, so I'm so pleased that I actually looked into that. But I'm not above making assumptions at all. Absolutely not. The difference is that I'm willing to see that it was an assumption and I'm willing to take ownership of it. And then guess what happens? My nervous system relaxes and I can start having normalized relations again. Well, that's the offering for every single one of us. But we need to care enough, right? That eighth principle of care. You need to care enough to look in places you haven't looked, to see the lesson in everything, no matter how ugly it is. There's a lesson there. Because life is about lesson learning. That's all it's ever been about. It's whether you're willing to see it as a lesson that you want to learn, as opposed to one you're being forced to learn. Because if you believe you're being forced to learn, you won't learn it. It's where you come to see that it's a choice, that you've come to choose to learn it. Then you'll be receptive to learning the lesson.